about that interruption. I will start from the beginning of that paragraph. Mr. McBride, Don's already having trouble at school because of the case, and if I get one more suspicious glance from my neighbors, I'm going to turn to salt. Lot's wife was turned to salt for looking, he said with a small smile. Not for being looked at, but I know what you mean, Michael. I know what you've been through. He put the camera away, slinging it over his shoulder by a leather strap. Not long after that, my dad arrived. He pried the nail free of the door and placed the snake into a sack to bring to the station. Then he broke up the crowd and brought Don in to my mom around the back. After that, he came to stand with me and Matt. Do you think this was a prank, Sheriff Jensen? Matt asked. One hell of a nasty prank, my dad replied. Too nasty for the same folks who came to the jail the other day? What folks? I asked. My dad hadn't told me there had been a group at the station protesting Marie being up there. Hard to say, he said to Matt. Hard to judge the limits of anyone after the things we've seen lately. Mr. McBride asked a few more questions, but my dad wouldn't comment further. Matt nodded and tipped his hat. I hope that little girl of yours is okay, he said, and walked back to his wife, slipping his arm around her thin waist. I hadn't noticed before, but she looked near frozen to the bone, and they broke into a jog as soon as they were back on the sidewalk in a hurry to get to their car. Do you want me to scrub the door? I asked. It's too cold. Let's go inside. I'll get a bucket of soapy water and come back out while your mom finishes up supper. He was taking photographs, I said when we got into the warmth of our bedroom. Mr. McBride, I mean. He said you could use them for the investigation. So I can use them, and so he can use them. He said he wouldn't, I said, though looking back I guess he'd said no such thing. Listen, my father grabbed my shoulder. I like Mr. McBride, I really do. I know some folks think he and his wife are a little strange, but I've always found them pleasant enough. But his obligation is to that paper. His loyalty is to that newspaper, not to what's decent, and don't you forget it. Before the events of that fall and winter, I would not have understood what my father meant. How could an obligation to the truth be anything but decent? But now I know. Mr. McBride ran the photographs in the Star a week later. When I confronted him about it in his office, he said he'd held them back as long as he could. But too many people had seen him take them, and he was beholden to them to write the story. Because it might have been a prank, sure, or it might have been a threat, and if it was, the public had a right to know. He said he wished he hadn't had to run it, or that it hadn't been my house. He wished it hadn't been the same snake that had been left once for me already. But I was still angry, and I still felt betrayed. You're a journalist, Michael, he said to me. You understand these choices. I did understand, and his running the story didn't stop me from thinking of him as a mentor. But it did change things between us, and I knew he regretted that, even if he didn't regret printing the photographs. Sometimes choices bear a price, even the right ones. One day, a long time afterward, I told him I still thought he was a good man. So does my sister, I said. She says she knew it the day we found the snake, because when you waved to us on the street, you did it with your handful of groceries, even though it would have been easier to let go of your wife's arm. She said she knew it then. I remember thinking once that I wasn't sure if the McBrides were happy together. I remember I thought of them as distant, but I must not have been paying very much attention.